Morning, friends. So today I'm still up here in Colorado, and one of my favorite things to do when we're traveling is get up early and just find a good stream, do a little trout fishing, and look around for wildlife. I think I said on our channel a while back that I loved capturing wildlife on video. I don't know what it is. It's just something about being able to just sit there and observe and watch it and be a part of it, you know? And I think that people who hunt, they get to be a part of it. You know, believe it or not, the hunting licenses in the U.S. are one of the largest conservation programs in the world. They fund a lot of what you see right here around me. But one of the things I want to do on our channel is help take people along to these places, because people don't see these places. They can't get out to see these places, and I understand that. And that disconnect with the reality of nature and being able to come out to these places, I think often opens the door for misunderstanding from a lot of people. And I was reading an article this morning about a man in Yellowstone who's under investigation now. And what he did was there were some bison crossing the river in Lamar, and a calf didn't make it across. And so this good pedestrian decided that what they were going to do was save that bison because it was getting separated from its mama. And obviously the Park Service ended up having to put the baby calf down. They couldn't do anything with it, because now that mankind has gotten involved with this baby bison, the mama won't take it back. Whereas if they just left it alone and they left the area, she would have most likely come back for it. I don't know if you guys have ever been around a mama bison and her baby, but it's really not a good idea to jump in there and try and rescue the baby. But I also, last winter when I was up in, the Montana, Yellowstone area, I posted a video of a coyote following me in the car. And I got so many comments from viewers about how the coyote was hungry, the coyote was injured because it was doing selective limping, and how I should have stopped and fed the poor coyote, and how inhumane I am that I made the coyote run. First of all, you don't make coyotes run. They can go wherever they want to, especially out in these areas. You don't make anything run. If anything, they might make you run. But the reality is that people don't involve yourself with wildlife. You're not helping anything. Just like the baby calf that had to get put down, if you go out and feed a coyote or feed a bear, chances are it's going to have to be put down too, because it starts to become reliant on people. I personally enjoy taking my kids out to places like this with the understanding that wildlife is very uninterested in human beings. In fact, they will head for the hills when they see us coming. But you start feeding them, and all of a sudden, you've got to walk around in places like these with bear mace, and you've got to be more on your toes, because they have started to look at humans as a source of food. And then every year you hear about bear attacks and them having to put bears down, them having to put coyotes down, them having to put a bison calf down. You would think that would be a harmless little animal, but they had to put it down because it's a wild animal and it didn't have a mama anymore. And, it was causing problems with people in Yellowstone because it was pulled out of the river by a person. Now, I've seen a lot of baby calves that have become reliant on people. But those are normally on a ranch. The rancher is generally bottle feeding or saving the calf to help keep their production up. And a lot of times people get attached to those bottle calves, and then, they reach about 2 years old and something happens. I just heard a story the other day about that happening. But, nature is a beautiful thing. Wild animals are amazing creatures, but don't feed them. Don't interact with them. Here's the other thing is, if you feed if I were to have fed that coyote, and I don't normally respond to comments because especially when there's a lot of people commenting on this, I don't want to offend anybody. But when you feed that wild animal, you're feeding them a diet that's not natural to them. In fact, it's not natural to us either. But we eat the food, and what we do to our health is one thing. We want to be obese and whatever, we'll eat whatever it is that we want. But when it comes to a wild animal, they need all the energy, all the health that they can possibly get to survive out in these places. And you start feeding it processed foods and foods that you had in your car, foods that are unnatural for it, foods that have been cooked. It's going to make that animal sick, and that animal could be dead in 24 hours because if it gets sick in a place like this, it could easily die. So, when I do these videos, it's not just about farming and agriculture and traveling around to those places, but it's giving people an opportunity to see our country from at least the perspective of a video channel, and maybe help educate people a little bit so that they understand this stuff. Another great point that has been coming up lately are wildfires. And this has been all over the news because this is just another misunderstanding in my perspective. But you heard about the Canadian wildfires. They had some fires, and then that was hit with a front with about 30-mile-an-hour winds, and boom, the whole place went up like kindling. Well, if you walk around out here, this isn't so bad, but a little further down the mountain coming up, you'll notice that a lot of the trees that are in these areas, you've got a lot of softwoods, you've got a lot of pines, you've got a lot of aspens, you've got a lot of paper birches, and they actually are fast-growing trees, and they die or they can get knocked over in wind fairly easily. And a little further down the mountain, you see a lot of that. The woods are just covered in it, and it doesn't make the perfect habitat for wildlife, number one. Number two, that's just piling up, and it's sitting there and drying out. And what's going to happen is one camper out here who has a spark in the wrong direction, and boom, this entire mountain's on fire. Now, naturally, fires would occur every so many years, every 2 years, every 3 years, sometimes in some areas every year. And those fires would clear out all of that brush. It would just remove it all, and then that way you don't have these massive burning fires. And in every article I read on what's happening in Alberta, I hear the time to fight climate change is now. Well, that's BS. I'm sorry, but it's total BS. It is a man-made problem. We do fire suppression, especially in areas like this, because what do people like? They like the pretty trees. They like looking at all this. This doesn't look so pretty after a wildfire, but you have to enjoy it in cycles. The other problem is that we've built cabins and we have infrastructure in places all over the place we want to protect, because that's millions of dollars, right? So we suppress the wildfires. Well, you can only suppress nature for so long before she comes back in a fury, and that's what you're seeing. You're not seeing this CO2 combusted fire out there that they're making you believe you're seeing. What you're seeing is actually a situation where we've allowed a lot of junk to just build up in the woods, a lot of trees falling over. Like I said in one of my recent videos, the trees are carbon banks, they're not carbon sinks. So they're just holding that carbon. Eventually they die, they fall over, it starts respirating. And that creates just basically a bed of ignitable energy on the base of the forest floor. And it has to happen to protect the ecosystem and create a good habitat for the animals that are out here, and we don't let it happen. And that's what's happening. That's what's happening in Alberta, and it's happening. We see it every year, because fires happen every year, believe it or not. It's just a big deal to us because we don't normally see it. Now, this is the first day that I've been out here in Colorado, and I've been able to see blue skies and not smoke because of the Alberta fires. So I'm actually kind of excited. I want to get my family out and go hiking or something just to see it, just to be out here. We're in a transition right now between places because of the fires. We had to sit still for a bit because we could get to some of the places we wanted to film. It wouldn't make great film if it was just smoky and hazy. But these are things that I hope people start to understand. If you don't get out and you see them, you read the propaganda, you believe it, and you start buying into this stuff thinking, oh my gosh, it's all going to go away. But in reality, you're buying into a lie, a very big lie. I've been, since I was a kid, an environmentalist, little junior naturalist. I used to work at nature preserves down in Florida. It's just something that I've always loved. I've always loved the outdoors. I'm the last person in the world who would want to do anything to hurt this type of environment. And I love agriculture and farming too. I've never in my life thought that we would have a dialogue out there that says that they're bad. I mean, if anything, the ranches that are out here are protecting the wildlife corridors, allowing wildlife to be able to go between mountain and mountain. Get down the mountain in that direction, you're hitting cities. So that's not a good place for wildlife to be able to migrate through. But they can migrate through ranches, and a lot of ranchers have great conservation programs. So there's just a lot of lies out there, and I'm hoping that by putting this stuff out there, I can help educate people. And like I said, I'm a bit of an environmentalist, a little bit of a naturalist. I love coming out to these places. I love the wild animals. I want to protect them. But I also am sensible about it, and I understand what is actually happening because I take the time to research it. I take the time to come out to these places and see it and understand it. And then if you drove up the mountain in the same direction that I did this morning, you'd see exactly what I'm talking about. It's a bonfire waiting to happen. Anyway, I had to give my little rant on that. Feeding animals, rescuing bison, all of these things are just, it's the guy rescuing the bison. I blame that on the PETA narrative. And I was recently down in Lyman, and I was talking to a rancher, and he had a very good point. PETA is important. It keeps people in check. If you're always out there worried about some activist banging on your door, you're going to do a better job. You're going to rise above it. You're going to up your game to not give them something to complain about. And I agree with that. I agree that, those groups do keep other people in check. Some of you might disagree with me on that, and I don't blame you. But then you read stories about that poor little bison calf, and it's like, well, this is what people are trained to think. They're trained to, to think that they're these saviors of these animals. And they take things out of course, they take things out of context, and what happens is the animal dies. So I think that while there might be a necessity to have some of those activists out there that are constantly pushing people to keep their game up because they don't want, the negative attention that those groups can bring to somebody and ruin their lives and businesses, it is also important to have correct education out there to help people correctly understand how these things work. And, there's just a lot more that we could be doing better as a society. And I've always felt that activist groups were dangerous just for those types of situations. People start getting caught up in thinking that, there's some sort of, I don't even know what those people were thinking. But anyway, I'm just out here this morning enjoying the fact that nobody else is out here, because once, in another month when it gets warmer out, give it mid-June, places like this are just going to be packed with hikers and bikers, which is fine. Everybody should enjoy it. But you enjoy things like in Yellowstone. If you go to Yellowstone in the winter, you enjoy these things more when there's nothing but you out here. That's my personal perspective. Anyway, enjoy your day, and I'm going to keep doing some of these little videos, let you guys in my head as I travel, because these are the type of things that go through my mind, and I think my family gets tired of hearing it after a while. They're like, Dad, I get the point.